Hello, MGOCSM Campus Ministry. Christ is risen. My name is Susan Zacharia, and I currently serve as the Secretary of the Diocese of Southwest America's Department of Counseling Services, with the ministry's director, Reverend Father George Paulus. This ministry's primary goal is to keep the doors of the church open to all, including those who may feel as though they don't belong. We hope to reach this goal in many ways, one of which is by working with the parishes across the diocese to eliminate mental health stigma within our predominantly Malayali community. In this video, we attempt to tackle the huge topic of mental health by breaking it down into two questions. One, why are we, as a ministry, even talking about mental health here? And two, what can I do for myself and what can I do for my community? To answer this first question, let's start with a passage from the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 5, verses 12 through 15. And it happened when he was in a certain city that behold, a man who was full of leprosy saw Jesus. And he fell on his face and implored him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then he put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. Immediately the leprosy left him. This isn't the first time we've heard of leprosy in the scriptures. Leprosy is an ancient disease that is much better understood today. However, leprosy was, and in some parts of the world still is, a condition in which people would attempt to protect themselves by walking in the other direction or avoiding eye contact with the individual struggling and suffering with leprosy. It's a disease that shuns, shames, isolates, and humiliates the individual. And yet, here in this passage, we see Christ, he whom we are called to become like, not only approach the man with leprosy and speak to him, but with his hand touch the man with leprosy. Christ saw the man he created and not the leprosy, whereas we might have struggled to see anything but the boils, the discoloration, the disease. We may not encounter individuals with leprosy on a regular basis, but perhaps we should ask ourselves, who do we shun? Who do we isolate? And who do we humiliate from walking through the doors of our parishes, retreats, fellowships? How often have we witnessed those who struggle with mental health issues slowly turn away from the church? May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, so all across the country, conversations are being held about how destructive mental health stigma really is. Today, we're talking about mental health within the context of our parish communities, because of our responsibilities as Christians. Christ calls us to act in love and compassion, as he did when he touched the man that no one else was willing to touch. Christ did not instruct us to be comfortable, but to be uncomfortable. And talking about mental health, it's uncomfortable stuff. Everyone has their own mental health to be concerned about. Whether you are old or young, born in India, born in America, female, male, attend church regularly or never have stepped foot into the church, we all have a mental health to be concerned about, just as we all have a physical health to be concerned about. According to the World Health Organization, the definition of mental health is as follows: a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. In other words, it relates to our thoughts, it relates to our emotions, and it relates to our behaviors. Let's be clear that mental health issues do not have to mean the presence of a mental health disorder. Just as physical health issues do not have to mean the presence of a physical health illness or disorder. For example, one can break a leg, heal from the injury, and be considered to have good physical health. Similarly, one might experience higher than average anxiety as a result of moving to a new campus, and within a few weeks might feel adjusted and the anxiety might be back to normal. At the same time, having a mental health disorder does not have to mean doom and gloom, just as having a physical health disorder does not have to mean doom and gloom. With modification, lifestyle modification, and monitoring, it's possible to live a meaningful life with, say, diabetes. Similarly, with life modifications and monitoring, it's possible to live a meaningful life with depression or anxiety. When talking about mental illness, many people automatically think of a severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia. That approach is like only thinking about celiac disease when talking about physical health. It's an extremely narrow mindset. We know that 1 in 5 Americans struggle with mental health issues. Nearly half of the individuals in need of treatment do not receive mental health treatment. As of 2015, the suicide rate in the United States was at 12.6 per 100,000 people. In India, the statistics, unfortunately, are much worse, with the suicide rate of 21.1 per 100,000 people, and that statistic is as of 2012. In particular, southern states of India, like Kerala, lead the country in deaths by suicide. Let's talk about the college environment for a moment. In one survey conducted by the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, in 2011, it reported that 73% of survey participants, and there were about 765 of them, they reported having experienced a mental health crisis while in college. When asked what triggered the crisis, most respondents reported at least one of the following: extreme feelings of anxiety, panic, depression about school and life, difficulty adjusting to a new routine and environment, feelings of homesickness, loneliness and isolation, feeling stressed or overwhelmed about course load, having a post-traumatic stress disorder episode triggered by class content or medications stopped working. We are addressing mental health here because not addressing mental health would mean that it's not important enough. So that leads to the second question. What can I do? What can I do for myself, and what can I do for my community? So, what can I do for myself? First step, know the warning signs. Different mental health issues have different symptoms, just as physical health issues would. It may be helpful, though, to keep an eye out for the following symptoms: excessive worrying or fear, feeling excessively sad or low, the inability to concentrate, confused thinking, extreme mood changes, changes in diet, changes in sleep, low energy, misuse of alcohol and/or drugs, physical ailments without obvious causes. If you find that you are just not feeling like yourself, seek help. Tell someone. Just as you would talk to someone or see a provider about that stomach pain that just won't go away, do the same with your mental health. Most college campuses have access to a student health center as well as a psychological services, which often includes free assessments as well as free sessions and offer many resources. Make use of those resources, especially as many of us are already paying for them. It is important to note that just as physical health issues left unaddressed for too long can be fatal and can lead to death, so can mental health issues. If you find yourself thinking about or planning to take your own life, seek help immediately. Tell someone, call the crisis line number, which is 1-800-273-8255. Present to a local ER. Whatever you do, just seek help. It may be also important to note that we shouldn't just worry about our mental health when things feel off, just as we don't only care about our physical health when something is wrong. We are often sure to eat well, sleep the right amount, exercise to maintain and promote physical wellness. In the same way, it may be helpful to increase the awareness of our own thought process, be intentional about how we cope with stress, monitor our mood changes to note patterns, and ask for help when needed. There are many ways we can reduce the stigma of mental health in our community. One of the biggest ways we can is by the way we talk about mental health. So step 1, talk about it. Bring it up in campus ministry discussions. Ask questions that tie in our emotions, our thoughts, our behavior to our faith. Challenge the status quo by asking questions about mental health that aren't usually asked in a parish setting. Because the chances are, if there are questions that are not being asked in the church, they're going to be asked outside of the church, and we're going to get answers outside of the church. Use words that seem scary to use, like suicide, abuse, etc. Because the reality is, those are real issues. And in order to eliminate stigma, We must talk about the very thing that is not talked about. Which leads us to step 2. Change how we talk about mental health. Notice how mental health stigma permeates our daily conversation. We use issues that are stigmatized and further stigmatize them through jokes. We say things, often unintentionally, like, "You are mental," or "You are so bipolar," or "You look anorexic," or just simply crazy or psycho. How we talk or avoid talking about certain issues reveal how we truly think and feel about them. Pay attention to the words we use and how it feeds into the culture that maintains the mental health stigma. One way to initially change our conversations would be to use person-first language. For example, instead of saying, "She's an alcoholic," consider saying, "She struggles with alcohol use." Or instead of saying, "He's suicidal," say, "He's having thoughts of taking his own life or killing himself or hurting himself." Whatever we do, we put the person first. The person-first language takes more time and energy, but it gives us the opportunity to see that the person is still a person and much more than the diagnosis or their struggles. They are a mother, they are a father, they're a friend, they are a sibling, they are a student, they're a professional, they're a Christian. They are more than the diagnosis, more than the label. In the parable we discussed earlier, Christ saw the person he created struggling with leprosy, not simply leprosy or the leper, which is what the community saw this man as they walked away. The objective of the Department of Counseling Services isn't simply to improve our mental health or simply to reduce the stigma. We sure hope that it's a part of it. However, this ministry is ultimately focused on bringing all of what we have as human, our body, our mind, our relationships, our money, our security, our comfort, to Christ, so that we can become like Him, so that we can become who He created us to become. If we neglect a part of ourselves, how can we bring the full selves to Christ? By working to eliminate mental health stigma, we hope more people will know that the church rejects no one and invites all. We must remember that although our culture and society may stigmatize mental health issues, the church does not. The church has worked alongside science for centuries and continues to do so today in efforts to reveal the glory of God. As Father Alexis Trader writes in his book titled The Ancient Christian Wisdom and Aaron Beck's Cognitive Therapy, he writes, "For the Fathers, medicine, science, and technology evoke not fear, but gratitude to God when valued and employed in a way consistent with His providential plan for creation." We hope you found this video to be helpful. Check out the attached documents for discussion prompts and additional resources, including a mental health screening tool. May the Lord continue to give us strength and courage to bring our full selves to Christ, especially when it's easier not to.